everyone and welcome back. So today in this session we will be reading a very interesting and a humorous play named Say the Right Thing, written by G.C. Thornley. Right, so let's begin. So before we start with the play, let us go through the main characters. Right, so the main characters are Mary Shaw, Mrs. Shaw, Mrs. Harding, and Mrs. Lee. So Mary Shaw is a little girl, right? And these are the guests, Mrs. Harding and Mrs. Lee. They come to their house. They are their neighbors, and they come to their house, and this little girl, Mary, she keeps speaking those things which she is not supposed to speak, right? So this is why the name of this play is Say the Right Thing. So now let's begin with the play. So when the curtain rises, we see Mary and her mother, that is Mrs. Shaw. They are there in the front room, that is the drawing room, right? And they are cleaning the drawing room and basically preparing for their guests, right? So, scene 1. Mary and her mother are standing in the front room of their house in Lanfield. So they live in Lanfield, and they are standing in the front room, that is the drawing room where the guests are entertained. Mrs. Shaw has a piece of cloth in her hand. There's a girl's coat over the back of one of the small chairs. So Mrs. Shaw is seen with a piece of cloth in her hand. Maybe she's dusting, cleaning, and there is a coat which is hanging over the back of one of the small chairs. And whose coat is it? Of course, it's Mary's coat. So Mrs. Shaw says, "The room looks cleaner now. Put that coat away in your bedroom. This room isn't the place for coats. Mrs. Harding and Mrs. Lee will be soon here, and they don't want to see that." So the mother tells the daughter to keep her coat in her bedroom because front room or the drawing room is not the right place to keep the coat. So Mrs. Lee and Mrs. Harding, they will be there soon, and obviously you need to keep your house clean if there's a guest in the house. Mary says, "You're always telling me to put things away." So Mary complains her mother that you keep telling me every time to keep my things away. Mrs. Shaw, "Yes, I am. You leave your clothes all over the house." So the mother replies that, of course, you leave your things, you scatter your things all over the house, right? So you need to keep your things at proper places. "I'm not a child." "No, you are not. So please keep your clothes in your own room." So when Mary says that "I'm not a child," so at this her mother says, "Of course you are not a child, and you must keep your clothes in your own room instead of keeping them here and there in the entire house. You should keep your clothes and your things in your own room at proper places." "Why are those two women coming here? Who's Mrs. Harding?" So Mary asks that, who's Mrs. Harding and why are they coming to our house? "She's the wife of a rich man. Mr. Harding has just bought a big house in Lanfield. They lived in London earlier. She's coming to see me to have a talk. I met her in a shop and asked her to come." So she says, Mary's mother tells her that Mrs. Harding is the wife of a rich man, and they have bought a house in Lanfield. Earlier they used to live in London, and now they are living here. And she met her in a shop and she invited her to the house, right? "Oh, I've seen her children. They often come along the road. Who's Mrs. Lee?" So the next question Mary puts up is, who's Mrs. Lee? And apart from that, she also says that she has seen the children of the house, in on the road, coming along on the road. She's Mr. Harding's sister. She's staying with them. So the mother replies that Mrs. Lee is Mr. Harding's sister and she lives here only. She's living with them only. What are you going to talk about? So now Mary asks that, what are you going to talk about when these guests are there at home? I don't know, all kinds of things. One day you'll have to go to houses yourself and talk to people. All women have to do it. So the mother replies the daughter that, I don't know. But, all kinds of things. And one day when you grow up, when you become a woman, you too have to do the same. You too need to talk to your neighbors and be friendly with them. I can talk now. I've been able to talk for a long time. So Mary says that she can talk and she'll be able to talk for a long time. Yes, that's true. You always talk too much. But does anyone want to hear the things that you say? So the mother says that, of course, I know you talk too much. You're very talkative. But the most important thing is, do people want to hear you? Whatever you say, do you speak relevant things? I can talk very well when I like. I'll stay with you today and talk to them when they come. So she says that I'll be with you when they come and I will also talk to them. Oh, I don't think so. You can go out for a walk. It'll be better if you do that. So the mother says that, no, you better go for a walk at that time when they come, right? You don't need to stay here. Why? If you stay with me, you may not say the right thing. So the mother is scared that if she stays here, if the daughter stays here with the guest, she might not say the right thing. She might say something wrong, right? So she prefers sending the daughter out for a walk at that time. I know the right things to say. Good afternoon and how are you and things like that. Let me stay today. I can do it very well. I'll show you. Anyone can talk. So Mary says that, no, I will talk nicely and I know, the right things to say, like good afternoon and how are you and things like that. And so let me stay with you today and I'll do it very well. I'll talk to them very nicely. You may stay if you like, but take care. I want to know Mrs. Harding well. I want her to ask me to go to their house. There isn't much to do here in Landfield, and I want to know some more people. I want some more friends here. So take care when you say anything. So the mother says that since there's hardly anything to do in Landfield, so she basically wants to become very friendly to her neighbor, right? She wants them to invite her to their house so that she becomes more friendly to them, right? Because there's hardly anything to do in Landfield. Tell me what to say. So Mary asks her mother, now Mama, you tell me what I have to say. I can't tell you everything, but you'll always be right if you're kind to people. Say things that will please them, then they'll like you. Laugh a lot and try to make them laugh too. And if everyone stops talking, say something to make them talk again. They don't want to sit here and look at the floor without speaking. Think of something to say. So when Mary asks her mother that what will she speak, so a beautiful reply from the mother. right? She tells her daughter that she doesn't know specifically what she will tell her to speak, to say, right? But she adds that always remember that if you are kind to you should be kind to people. If you are kind to people, obviously whatever you say, people will like you, right? Make them laugh, make them happy, so they will love to listen to you, right? A beautiful message here, a beautiful lesson to the daughter from the mother. So she tells her daughter that you speak whatever makes them happy, whatever makes them laugh, and they should want to sit here and spend more time. And if somebody if the conversation is over, then start with a new conversation, because they should not sit idle, or else they'll feel bored, right? They should not keep looking at the floor. So once one conversation is over, immediately start with something else. That is, do keep talking to them so that they don't feel bored. I can do that. There's always something to say. Must I do anything else? So she's quite confident. Mary is quite confident, and she says that, of course, I can do that. And there's always something to say, right? And apart from this, should I do something else? When they're ready to leave, don't jump out of your chair and look gladly at the door. You must look sorry when they want to leave. So the mother also tells her that when they are about to leave, don't be so glad. Don't show your happiness that the guests are going, right? You should you should have that sorry feeling on your face, because you need to show that you want them to be in your house for some more time, right? What shall I do when they want to go? Ask them to stay a little longer. Just say, must you go? Can't you stay? Or something like that. You like them and you want them to stay, and you must let them understand that. So Mary asks that what should she say when they are about to leave. So at this, the mother replies that you must tell them not to go. Must you go means you should not go. So must you is a phrase used for telling someone that what they are doing, you are not liking that. So when they leave, you should say, must you go, which means you must not go. So she says that, when they are about to leave, you should tell them to stay for some more time, and you like them and you want them to stay with you, spend some more time with you. That's not very hard, is it? I remember that. Must you go? Can't you stay? Must you go? Can't you stay? So Mary says that it's not so difficult. I'll definitely do that. And she uh, continues revising these terms. That's right. Now take that coat to your room and change into a clean dress. You must look nice when they come, and if everyone stops talking, say something kind to make them talk again. And don't say anything that will make them angry. So the mother tells the daughter that now you go and change, wear some clean, nice dress, and you must look nice. And if everyone stops talking, say something kind to make them talk again. So start with some conversation, right? I'll remember. I've often done harder things than this. So Mary is quite confident, and she says, of course, I'm going to remember, because I've done even difficult things than this. Next, scene 2 begins. The same room, 1 hour later, Mrs. Harding and Mrs. Lee are sitting in the room with Mary and her her mother. So when the curtain reopens for scene 2, we see Mary, her mother, then Mrs. Harding and Mrs. Lee. They all are sitting in the drawing room. Mrs. Shaw says, "So, you like Landfield, Mrs. Harding? I'm very glad." "Yes, we like it very much. It's not the same as London, but there are some very nice people here and we found a good house." So, Mrs. Shaw asks Mrs. Harding that you must be liking Landfield. So, at this, Mrs. Harding replies, "Of course, yes. And there are some very good people we have come across and we are really glad about such nice people here at Landfield." No one says anything more and Mrs. Shaw looks at Mary. So the conversation stops and now it's all quiet and everybody's silent, and now Mrs. Shaw, that is Mary's mother, looks at Mary to begin with some conversation. "What beautiful children you have, Mrs. Harding. I've often seen them walking along the road." So Mary begins that you have beautiful children and I've often seen them walking along the road. Mrs. Harding replies, "Oh, I haven't any children." "Oh, yes, you have. I've seen them, a little boy and a little girl." So when Mary talks about her children, Mrs. Harding replies that she doesn't have any children. At this, Mary again, says that, "Yes, you do have. I've seen them, a little boy and a little girl." Mrs. Harding, not very pleased. So she is not very pleased with whatever Mary is saying. "I have no children, believe me." Mary says, "Oh." Mrs. Shaw, "They must be someone else's children. Have you met Mr. Best? He's a nice man. He lives near you." You see, Mary said something which she should not have spoken, isn't it? She's talking about her children, whereas Mrs. Harding doesn't have any child. So, at this, Mrs. Shaw, breaks. She says that just to, change the topic, she says that you must have met Mr. Best, and he's a very nice man. He lives near you. "Oh, Mr. Best, he lives here and he works in London." So Mary now again jumps into the conversation and she adds that, "Oh yes, Mr. Best, he lives here in Landfield and he goes to London for work. He goes all the way to London by train every morning and then he comes all the way back by train every night. He lives in trains." She laughs. "What kind of life is that? Why do people do things like that? They don't know how to live." And he reads 2 newspapers in the train every day. He never reads a book. But he is only a banker and bankers can't think. So see what Mary says. She talks about Mr. Best saying that he lives on the train, right? In the morning he goes to London and in the evening he comes back. So most of the time he spends in train every day. It seems as if he lives in trains, and she laughs at this. And then she adds that what kind of a life is this, living on the train? So why do people do things like that? They don't know how to live. They don't know how to enjoy their life. And he reads newspapers in the train every day. He never reads a book. He is a banker and bankers can't think. So she says that instead of reading books, he reads newspaper every day. While going as well as while coming back, he reads newspapers. At this, Mrs. Lee says, my brother's a banker. He goes to London by train every morning and comes back every night. He reads two newspapers in the train in the morning and another every night. So Mrs. Lee adds that my brother's a banker, that is Mr. Harding, who's a rich man. He is also a banker and he goes to London by train, and every morning and every evening he comes back, every night he comes back by train. He reads two newspaper, one while going to the office in the morning and the other one while coming back in the at night. So he also reads two newspapers. So see what Mary said. Actually, she should not have spoken that. Mary, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know. I didn't know. So she says, I'm so sorry, I didn't know that your brother is a banker. Bankers always have to read a lot of newspapers. Do you know Mrs. Best? She's a nice woman. I like her. So Mrs. Shaw says, just to manage the situation, she says, of course, bankers must have a lot of knowledge. That is the reason they have to read a lot of newspapers. What's going all around. So they must be updated. They must be well informed about things going on around, and therefore a banker should read newspaper. Next, she says, do you know Mrs. Best? She's a nice woman. I like her. She says that Mrs. Best is also a very nice woman. Do you know her? But have you seen her clothes? She goes out in a blue dress with a red coat over it. So now Mary talks about her dress, her clothes, Mrs. Best's clothes, that she doesn't like her clothes, her way of dressing up at all. She wears a blue dress and then she puts on a red coat over it. And then she laughs at this. Mrs. Harding replies, I have a blue dress and I often put on my red coat at the same time. So Mrs. Harding says that even I also dress up like that. I too have a blue dress and I also wear a red coat over it at the same time. I like blue dresses and red coats. Now, Mrs. Shaw, again, just to manage the situation, she adds that I do like blue dresses and red coats, and then there is a silence in the room. Mary again starts. I saw Mrs. Cotter this afternoon. I met her in the street. No one ever sees her in the morning because she always stays in bed then. So she talks about now Mrs. Cotter, and she met her in the street, and that no one sees her in the morning. Why? Because she is always in her bed. She is a late riser and she stays in her bed for a longer time. So nobody can see her in the morning. And she's always asking the doctor to come and see her. And what else is there with Mrs. Cotter? That she would always call a doctor to come and see her. I can't understand women who stay in bed in the morning. And why must she always ask for the doctor? I've never been to a doctor in my life. So Mary says that she really doesn't understand why people ask for doctors all the time, and she's always asking for the doctor, and I've never been to, she says that she herself has never been to any doctor. Mrs. Harding now replies, I stay in bed in the morning myself. So Mrs. Harding says that she also stays in the bed, in her bed in the morning. Mrs. Lee, I often go to the doctor. Mary says, oh, I'm sorry. So again, she spoke the wrong thing. She spoke whatever she should not have spoken. Mrs. Shaw, do you know Mrs. Grentley? She's one of my best friends. So Mrs. Shaw says that, do you know Mrs. Brentley? She's one of my very good friends, rather her best friend. But she's so fat. Fat women aren't very beautiful, are they? So again, Mary adds on to this conversation by saying that she's so fat. Mrs. Grantley is so fat that she doesn't like her, and fat women aren't very beautiful. Mrs. Lee says, my mother's a very fat woman. Mary, Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that. So immediately Mrs. Lee says that my mother is also very fat. So at this again, I mean, Mary says, oh, I'm sorry. So she should not have spoken that. And even she had said, now, Mary, looking out of the window. Oh, there's that dog again. It always looks very dirty. I don't like dogs. Do you? That dog's always near our house. Why do people keep dogs? Who wants a dog? Why? And why doesn't its owner keep it clean? Have you seen it? So now she, looks out of the window and she can see a dog right now. So again, now she starts talking about the dog that she doesn't understand why people keep dogs, and this dog looks very dirty, and it's always near their house. And she says that she doesn't understand why people keep dogs, and all about dogs, right? And Mrs. Harding replies, looking out of the window. She says, yes, I've seen it. That's Tozzer. It's our dog. So whose dog was Mary talking about? She was talking all negative about whose dog? Yes, it was Mrs. Harding's dog only, right? So she says that yes, it's our dog. It's Tozzer. Mary, now with a red face, she's blushing. Why? Because she has said what she should not have. So, with a red face, she says, oh, I didn't know. Now, no one again speaks. There's absolute silence in the room. Mary, still looking out of the window. There's Mr. Pomeroy on his horse. He's always talking about horses. He rides a horse every day and he shoots birds. It isn't right. Why must the poor birds die? What have they done to Mr. Pomeroy? And why do some men like horses more than they like people? It's hard to understand men. So now she looks out of the window and she catches the sight of Mr. Pomeroy, who's riding a horse. Now again, she starts negative about him, that he's always talking about horses and he rides a horse every day, and he also shoots birds. Killing birds is something wrong. Why should those poor innocent birds die? What have they done to Mr. Pomeroy? So they've not done, the birds have not done, have not harmed Mr. Pomeroy. So why should they die? And why do some men like horses more than they like people? So why are people just fond of horses? It's really hard to understand man. At this, Mrs. Lee says, my brother shoots birds when he has the time, and he rides his horse when he can. He sold his house in London and bought a house here because he wanted to ride and shoot. So again, she had said just the opposite thing. Something which she should not have spoken. Right, so when she kept criticizing Mr. Pomeroy for his fondness about horse and shooting birds, Mrs. Lee says that her brother, that is Mr. Harding, he is also very fond of horses, and they have shifted from London to here, and they've bought a big house just because he wanted to ride horses and he wanted to shoot. Mrs. Harding, looking at Mrs. Lee. It's getting a little late. We must go now, Mrs. Shaw. It has been very nice to have a little talk. So Mrs. Harding now looks at Mrs. Lee and she says that it's quite late and they should now leave, right? And she says that it has been nice talking to her. Mrs. Lee, very nice. So Mrs. Lee also adds that yes, it's been a pleasure talking to them. Mrs. Shaw, it was very good of you to come to see us. Please stay a little longer. So Mrs. Shaw says that it was really wonderful. We enjoyed your company. So please stay here for some more time. Spend some more time with us. Now see what happens. Mary, Now what she says, again she says just the opposite thing what she had to. So unable to say the right thing, even now she says, oh, must you stay? Can't you go? So she says that instead of saying must you go, she says must you stay. That means you must not stay now, you must go, right? So with this the story ends. The writer, the dramatist, ends the play with a humorous note, right? So I hope all of you enjoyed reading this play, and it was really fun and a lot of humor. And with this, I wind up my session. So do read the lesson well. Thank you so much.